Can I try projecting? Check ko lang yung HTML.
Yeah, let's try that. So hello to everyone that is joining the stream. We are testing this. Let me just. Sige nga. Can you try to speak?
Is it the microphone?
Microphone test. Microphone test. Microphone test. Mic test. Test. Mic test.
Projection.
Yeah, that's where it's going. Okay. All right.
Is it
But
good?
kailangan natin papatay na yung
Music.
yung music. Yep.
Alam niyo ba kung paano patayin yung music? Alam niyo kung paano patayin yung music? Patayin yung music.
You've earned an AWS certification. Digital badge to your professional profiles and email signature to highlight your skills. Share it on your social feeds to celebrate with your network, and offer verification via email or on your resume. Cloud skills are in demand, and you have them. Share your AWS certified achievement today.
I'm from Singapore.
From Vietnam.
AWS User Group Thailand.
I'm an AWS community builder.
I run the user group in Singapore as a community hero.
I'm an AWS community leader.
I love AWS community.
Go AWS.
I'm so proud that all the group members are very proactive to support each other.
I'm really passionate about making artificial intelligence and machine learning more accessible.
I'm also one of the AWS machine learning heroes around the world.
It's a global, positive and diverse community.
ผมเป็น Amazon Web Service Community Hero ประจำประเทศไทยนะครับ
The love of the technology and the friendship in the community.
Go AWS.
Welcome to AWS Educate's Cloud Career Pathway. AWS Educate helps you create a pathway into innovative and lucrative opportunities in the rapidly expanding cloud industry. On AWS Educate, you will discover the skills necessary to advance into cloud careers, explore content, test your knowledge, seek micro-credentials as badges and certificates of completion, and even have the opportunity to apply for jobs and internships in the cloud. Start off by building your profile, adding your resume, classes, degrees attained, and other facets of your experience. Then, select a cloud career field. From there, we'll personalize your plan by providing content that matches your pathway. As you consume that content, we'll prompt you to take knowledge checks of 3 to 5 questions in order to gauge your comprehension. After you've completed 50% of the knowledge checks, you'll have a chance to earn an AWS Educate badge. Then, up-level your profile by completing a project and a final assessment, and you can receive an AWS Educate Certificate of Completion. Take applicable courses at your school or online to grow your knowledge and fill gaps in your skill set. All of these achievements can be added into your portfolio. Then put it all together. Apply for a job or internship at Amazon or at one of our customers or partners through the AWS Educate Job Board. Download your portfolio and send it to your potential employer to get your ideal job in the cloud. So what are you waiting for? Start your career pathway today.
Hi, I'm Amilcar with AWS. If your organization relies on Windows-based applications to run the business, your developers can continue to be as productive and effective if they develop applications for AWS. AWS provides tools developers can use to manage AWS services and Windows applications, empowering them to easily develop, debug, and deploy .NET projects. You can easily get started quickly with the AWS SDK for .NET. The SDK helps take the complexity out of coding by providing .NET APIs for AWS services, including Amazon S3, Amazon EC2, Amazon DynamoDB, and more. In addition, the AWS library provides numerous templates and resources to get your project started. The SDK comes pre-installed with any Windows instance and can be downloaded from NuGet or installed using the MSI package. It also includes the AWS Toolkit for Microsoft Visual Studio and the AWS tools for Windows PowerShell. Lastly, with AWS, developers can deploy at scale using AWS Code Deploy with autoscaling, and deploy applications using CloudFormation templates that help you easily deploy and manage solutions. You can also simply upload your code and Elastic Beanstalk automatically handles the deployment, from capacity, provisioning, load balancing, and auto-scaling to application health monitoring. When your developers work with AWS, you don't lose a beat in productivity and your investments and skills can be applied immediately.
You've earned an AWS certification. Congratulations! Now what? Show your employer, colleagues, and your customers that you've met the bar set by AWS experts. Add your digital badge to your professional profiles and email signature to highlight your skills. Share it on your social feeds to celebrate with your network. And offer verification via email or on your resume. Cloud skills are in demand, and you have them. Share your AWS certified achievement today.
I'm from Singapore.
From Vietnam.
AWS User Group Thailand.
I'm an AWS Community Builder.
I run the user group in Singapore as a community hero.
I'm an AWS community builder.
I love AWS community.
Go AWS.
I'm so proud that all the group members are very proactive to support each other.
I'm really passionate about making artificial intelligence and machine learning more accessible.
I am also one of the AWS machine learning heroes around the world.
It's a global, positive and diverse community.
ผมเป็น Amazon Web Service Community Hero ประจำประเทศไทยนะครับ
The love of the technology and the friendship in the community.
Go AWS.
Welcome to AWS Educate's Cloud Career Pathway. AWS Educate helps you create a pathway into innovative and lucrative opportunities in the rapidly expanding cloud industry. On AWS Educate, you will discover the skills necessary to advance into cloud careers, explore content, test your knowledge, seek micro-credentials as badges and certificates of completion, and even have the opportunity to apply for jobs and internships in the cloud. Start off by building your profile, adding your resume, classes, degrees attained, and other facets of your experience. Then, select a cloud career field. From there, we'll personalize your plan by providing content that matches your pathway. As you consume that content, we'll prompt you to take knowledge checks of 3 to 5 questions in order to gauge your comprehension. After you've completed 50% of the knowledge checks, you'll have a chance to earn an AWS Educate badge. Then, up-level your profile by completing a project and a final assessment, and you can receive an AWS Educate Certificate of Completion. Take applicable courses at your school or online to grow your knowledge and fill gaps in your skill set. All of these achievements can be added into your portfolio. Then put it all together. Apply for a job or internship at Amazon or at one of our customers or partners through the AWS Educate Job Board. Download your portfolio and send it to your potential employer to get your ideal job in the cloud. So what are you waiting for? Start your career pathway today.
Hi, I'm Amilcar with AWS. If your organization relies on Windows-based applications to run the business, your developers can continue to be as productive and effective if they develop applications for AWS. AWS provides tools developers can use to manage AWS services and Windows applications, empowering them to easily develop, debug, and deploy .NET projects. You can easily get started quickly with the AWS SDK for .NET. The SDK helps take the complexity out of coding by providing .NET APIs for AWS services, including Amazon S3, Amazon EC2, Amazon DynamoDB, and more. In addition, the AWS library provides numerous templates and resources to get your project started. The SDK comes pre-installed with any Windows instance and can be downloaded from NuGet or installed using the MSI package. It also includes the AWS Toolkit for Microsoft Visual Studio and the AWS tools for Windows PowerShell. Lastly, with AWS, developers can deploy at scale using AWS Code Deploy with autoscaling, and deploy applications using CloudFormation templates that help you easily deploy and manage solutions. You can also simply upload your code and Elastic Beanstalk automatically handles the deployment, from capacity, provisioning, load balancing, and autoscaling to application health monitoring. When your developers work with AWS, you don't lose a beat in productivity and your investments and skills can be applied immediately.
You've earned an AWS certification. Congratulations! Now what? Show your employer, colleagues, and your customers that you've met the bar set by AWS experts. Add your digital badge to your professional profiles and email signature to highlight your skills. Share it on your social feeds to celebrate with your network, and offer verification via email or on your resume. Cloud skills are in demand, and you have them. Share your AWS certified achievement today.
I'm from Singapore.
From Vietnam.
AWS User Group Thailand.
I'm an AWS Community Builder.
I run the user group in Singapore as a community hero.
I'm an AWS community builder.
I love AWS community.
Go AWS.
I'm so proud that all the group members are very proactive to support each other.
I'm really passionate about making artificial intelligence and machine learning more accessible.
I'm also one of the AWS machine learning heroes around the world.
It's a global, positive and diverse community.
ผมเป็น Amazon Web Service Community Hero ประจำประเทศไทยนะครับ
The love of the technology and the friendship in the community.
Go AWS.
Welcome to AWS Educate's Cloud Career Pathway. AWS Educate helps you create a pathway into innovative and lucrative opportunities in the rapidly expanding cloud industry. On AWS Educate, you will discover the skills necessary to advance into cloud careers, explore content, test your knowledge, seek micro-credentials as badges and certificates of completion, and even have the opportunity to apply for jobs and internships in the cloud. Start off by building your profile, adding your resume, classes, degrees attained, and other facets of your experience. Then, select a cloud career field. From there, we'll personalize your plan by providing content that matches your pathway. As you consume that content, we'll prompt you to take knowledge checks of 3 to 5 questions in order to gauge your comprehension. After you've completed 50% of the knowledge checks, you'll have a chance to earn an AWS Educate badge. Then, up-level your profile by completing a project and a final assessment, and you can receive an AWS Educate Certificate of Completion. Take applicable courses at your school or online to grow your knowledge and fill gaps in your skill set. All of these achievements can be added into your portfolio. Then put it all together. Apply for a job or internship at Amazon or at one of our customers or partners through the AWS Educate Job Board. Download your portfolio and send it to your potential employer to get your ideal job in the cloud. So what are you waiting for? Start your career pathway today.
Hi, I'm Amilcar with AWS. If your organization relies on Windows-based applications to run the business, Your developers can continue to be as productive and effective if they develop applications for AWS. AWS provides tools developers can use to manage AWS services and Windows applications, empowering them to easily develop, debug, and deploy .NET projects. You can easily get started quickly with the AWS SDK for .NET. The SDK helps take the complexity out of coding by providing .NET APIs for AWS services, including Amazon S3, Amazon EC2, Amazon DynamoDB, and more. In addition, the AWS library provides numerous templates and resources to get your project started. The SDK comes pre-installed with any Windows instance and can be downloaded from NuGet or installed using the MSI package. It also includes the AWS Toolkit for Microsoft Visual Studio and the AWS tools for Windows PowerShell. Lastly, with AWS, developers can deploy at scale using AWS Code Deploy with autoscaling, and deploy applications using CloudFormation templates that help you easily deploy and manage solutions. You can also simply upload your code and Elastic Beanstalk automatically handles the deployment, from capacity, provisioning, load balancing, and autoscaling to application health monitoring. When your developers work with AWS, you don't lose a beat in productivity and your investments and skills can be applied immediately.
All right. Hello to everybody on the stream, and hello to the audience here at KFC Armstrong. To the people on the stream, can you tell me if you could hear us? If you cannot, please tell us, and yeah, just please inform us if it's all coming through loud and clear. We'll figure it out. But yeah, so thank you for being here for today's Philippine.NET user group. Well, it's a hybrid session, so we're here at KMC Armstrong. I'm gonna turn the camera around just to. It's a pretty intimate venue, and we have here. Say hello, everyone. All right, it's a pretty intimate venue, and we're really just figuring out how to go back to in face-to-face events. But yeah. Yeah, feel free to just continue watching the live stream. Before we go, I will put that on the chat. Could you hear us? All right. Just making sure that we could be heard.
Yeah, you're looking at a huge DJ outfit right there.
Yeah, right. All right. All right. Thank you for responding to us. All right. So before we continue this event, so we thank everybody who is here. First, we'd like to So this event is in partnership with AWS Club Pilipinas and AWS User Group Philippines. So they're our partner for organizing this and making this possible. It's actually their physical office or their physical office building, the facilities here that that we're using. And also we'd like to thank PageUp, which also helps us make this event possible. Now there's a bunch of openings in Manila right now for PageUp. So please proceed to pubcareers.pageuppeople.com to find out more about those. And we will be having an event on. So something messed up in the font. But we will be having an event on Monday. It's called Learn More About the Day-to-Day Life of a PageUp Software Engineer. So I hope you'll be able to visit that link in the screen and join us. It's going to be just a live chat. Ask us anything, and we will be there to ask you. And maybe you could figure out if PageUp is a good place for you to work in. And then next is we would like to thank the .NET Foundation hosting our current YouTube live stream. So thank you very much to the .NET Foundation. They have been our home for the past 1.5 years, and their support is really invaluable for us to be able to continue these events. And please visit or join the .NET Virtual User Group Meetup, where you could watch the meetups of different .NET user groups around the world, not just in the Philippines, not just the one we have in the Philippines, but various UG meetups in the US and elsewhere, Europe, India, and other parts of Southeast Asia. So join them. And finally, please join us in our social media channels. Facebook, join our group, follow us on Twitter, join us in our meetup, and join us in our, even you follow our LinkedIn page. Right. So our speaker for today doesn't really need a second introduction. I think we introduced him before, back in, was it February?
I think January.
Yeah, earlier this year. So he already spoke for us. And this time he'll be speaking to us about live streaming or video streaming content of AWS. So in this generation of, you want to build your own Zoom competitor, maybe this will be a thing for you. So let us begin. So to join us here on your webcam, man. There we have Carding Ilaga from AWS Philippines. So,
hello.
Good evening. I'll hand the mic over to you physically this time.
All right. Hello, everyone in the stream, and hello, everyone here at KFC Armstrong. It's very confusing where to look. So it's honestly my first face-to-face event in like what, 2.5 years, I think. So everybody in the stream and everybody in the room, please, give us a bit of slack as we figure this out, right? My name is Rtmp Ilaga. Most people call me Carding. I like to speak, so I've been around. I go to a lot of communities and share what I know as much as I can. I love being with John. John's excellent companion, and I love working with the Philippine .NET user group as well. So I'm a prototyping engineer for Amazon Web Services. So what that generally means is I have to keep like a very, very wide breadth of technology. So I kind of have to understand a lot of technology. Not so much a master in any of them, right? But you have to pretty much know quite a bit. One of the things that I notice whenever I talk in communities, for example, is that because communities tend to be, a mishmash of a melting pot of different experiences, different people, and different essentially backgrounds. Community talks tend to be very general as well. So a lot of the talks that we go through in meetups and communities, they tend to be very, very useful, but they also tend to be a bit high level, yeah? Because we have to cater to everyone, right? So today, what I kind of want to do is I want to try to talk about a topic that's a very, very technically deep, like a very narrow, very focused kind of niche that not everybody here on the stream or in the room may probably need to work with. But the idea is that hopefully, we don't, as technologists ourselves, what I want to get out of this is that we don't forget there's, a lot of other fields in technology that we may not know about, that we may want to explore, right? So today, I'm going to try to hit a bit of .NET, but I'll try to keep it agnostic as well. I'll also try to hit a bit of AWS, but again, I'll try to keep it agnostic. Just so it's as wide as possible. But today, I'm going to try to be talking about live streaming. So it just so happens that my current prototyping engagement right now, I'm actually working on something live streaming based. One of the, I think, interesting things about live streaming is I think in the past year or so, in the pandemic especially, it feels like live streaming as a technology, as a platform, as essentially a foundation for a lot of services, essentially boomed, right? There's now a lot more focus on video conferencing, remote meetings, whenever you're working from home. We now have a lot of ways to share live streams, live media, be it video or audio or anything. If you're streaming games, if you're streaming your daily life, if you're streaming whatever, right? There's a lot more avenues for you to do that now. So what I want to talk about today is actually very, very basic. How does live streaming work? Like fundamentally, what do you need to do to achieve like end-to-end live streaming? And I'll try to take a few minutes to show you, like, actually put substance into the theory and show you exactly how to, do some basics with achieving end-to-end. And then we'll spend the latter part of the discussion to diving into the more, I guess, intermediate or a bit more complicated concept that you might want to know when you need to build live streaming apps, right? Does that sound good? If you have, yes.
I think you're not sharing the right screen.
Am I not?
Yeah, it is still showing this.
Well, it is not a tech demo if nothing goes wrong, right? So
yeah,
let's try to see if we can figure this out.
Yeah. So the irony there is that we're having problems with the streaming.
Yes, correct.
In a live stream.
Let's try that again.
Share the.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to share the?
Is that going through? Doesn't look like it.
No. It's showing the other screen.
Fun. Give us a few minutes, folks.
StreamYard problems.
I wonder if I should
wanting to share the, what do you call this? A window?
Oh, no.
Is it possible?
No, it doesn't see that. Let me see if I can do it via
the slides.
Share it from Chrome instead of Firefox.
Oh, it might be a Firefox thing.
Yeah, it might be a Firefox thing.
Okay, we got your second thing. Here. Yeah.
Is that better?
Not yet. Okay. Let me share again. It's not PowerPoint now. It's
yeah.
What's that? No.
That's all right. Let me see if this helps.
Yes. All right.
Sorry, I need to restart Chrome.
Okay. Right.
Perfect. That's working now. It's always a web dev issue. All right. So as I was saying, I think we're okay. Yeah. Okay. As I was saying, we'll go through a bit of the fundamentals about how live streaming works. I'll go to a bit of a very, very quick demo about getting live stream to actually work with real code. And then we'll go and talk about a little bit more about the intermediate and the advanced concepts that you may want to know about live streaming. All right? So let's dive right in. So I'm thinking, you still see the screen, right? Has anybody, sound off in the chat, has anybody tried, or in the room, has anybody tried live streaming? Like doing the Twitch, doing the TikTok thing, doing the YouTube live thing, the Facebook live thing? Ooh. This room's pretty quiet. Okay, so if you don't know, if you're doing live streams, you're essentially, one end is broadcasting, right? And then the other end is pretty much watching. That's the point of a live stream. If you're the one watching, if you're like on the other end, the watching end of a live stream, you essentially will work with something more generally with a URL, something like this. Most of the time, it's going to be a .M3u8, right? If you want to watch a live stream, you essentially just need to plug that into a player that knows how to play a live stream on M3u8. We'll talk about how that works later, right? So I'm just plugging that M3u8 right there. Then let's see if we can play that. There we go. Big Buck Bunny, I think, yeah. So that's essentially how you watch. Pretty simple, right? And that's the demo, folks. Thank you for coming. But yeah. So essentially, if you're watching a live stream, it's essentially as easy as plugging in a URL to a client that's aware of broadcasting of the live stream, right? Yes, sir. Oh yeah, that's a projector. That's just a projector. Sorry about that. So essentially, we'll talk more about the whole architecture of how live stream works a little bit more later, right? But at its simplest, live streaming is essentially just this. So if you're making like a bit of a live streaming app somewhere, you want to make the next Zoom, you want to make the next, I don't know, messaging app with call features maybe, or whatever, right? You just need to get multimedia from one end to the next, to one end to another. You're essentially going to be looking at an architecture that looks like this. And it's pretty much at its simplest. You're going to be looking at around three things. You're going to need a broadcast, right? On one end, somebody has to be quote unquote playing media. On the other end, somebody has to be watching. Somebody has to be consuming that, right? In the middle, there's going to be some form of distribution to that. How do you disseminate? How do you send? How do you get all that multimedia from one end to the next? So that's where your distribution comes in, your encoder, your distribution, right? If you're just going to be looking on both ends, the broadcast and the consumer, you're really going to be working with just URLs. So the broadcast side of it is it's going to be interested in sending media to a URL, most often, right? And then the consumer, same thing. It's also going to be interested in getting a URL, right? So that's really how it works. The URL is generally going to be different. The broadcast URL is going to be different from the consumer URL, right? So if you've ever tried to live stream, for example, to Twitch, if you're doing your live stream games, you'll know that you have, if you're sending video to Twitch, for example, you're going to be sending multimedia, you're going to be sending videos and audio to an Rtmp URL, right? Same thing. So a lot of live streaming works very, very similarly. We'll talk more about the difference between alternatives in a bit. But with that in mind, let me show you how that works now. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to, like I said, If you're using Twitch, then if you have a Twitch account, for example, you'll have a dedicated URL for your channel, for your profile, where you can send stuff over, right? If you want to build your own kind of live streaming distribution, then you'll need to have some kind of encoder service. This guy in the middle, where that creates the URLs for you, right? If you're on AWS, for example, and different clouds will have their own alternatives, right? Will have their own analogs. Let me just zoom this in so you can see. So on AWS, the easiest way to actually create a live stream is a service called the Interactive Video Service, IVS, right? So if you go to AWS console, and then go here, I already have a channel set up, but let me just walk you through what it takes to create a channel. So once you go here, just a list of your channels over here, you can just click that button. What you really just need to do is give it a name. Say workshop streaming, something like that, right? For the most part, you don't really need to do anything else. So IVS is pretty much the kind of the training wheel, simple thing, easy to get, easy to start with kind of streaming service on AWS. Once you give it a name, you pretty much just need to create a channel, and then off you go. So what that does is you create the equivalent of that middle section there. You get an encoder and a distribution kind of system piece in that whole equation. So now all you need to do is take care of the broadcast and take care of the consumer, right? So just going back here, this is the channel that I just created. What you get with your channel is a stream configuration right there, right? So you get an ingest URL. That ingest URL will have a private stream key that you shouldn't know. It works a lot like a password. It's secret, right? And then it also has a playback configuration URL, different URL, right? So what happens now is if you're building an app, say you're creating a mobile app that does live streaming to a lot of different audiences, whoever is broadcasting needs to know the ingest server URL, the Rtmp server URL right there with the stream key, right? Then the playback configuration URL over here has to be sent one way or another to whoever's watching. So all of those watchers just need to go to the playback URL right there. To give you a very quick demo of that, I've already prepared a channel here, so I don't have to keep on, transferring URLs, right? So I've already created a channel here. Same thing. It has an ingest URL. It has a playback configuration URL. The easiest way to actually test live streaming is, in my opinion, is this application called OBS. So if you've tried OBS before, looks like this, right? So what you only need to do is point your stream to the URL settings that you have on IBS, right? Plug in the stream key, and then you just start streaming. So I didn't mention that a lot of all of the demos today are very, very fragile. I was telling John this earlier that our demos today are very fragile. So help me pray to the demo gods tonight. So, okay, so now we're currently streaming, right? If I go on over here, let me just refresh my channel. My stuff is already being streamed, right? So that's pretty much as easy as it gets. Now, that's really only one half of the equation. I'm just broadcasting stuff over, right? Let's try playing it back. So like I said, your channel will get a playback configuration URL. Let's play that over on our VLC, the one I was using earlier. Get that out of the way. VLC, there we go. Oops, open network. Then I'll plug my playback URL over there. And there we go. I am now live streaming, right? So as you can see, pretty interestingly, there's very significant latency. There's a very significant latency difference, right? So the one on my web page is ahead of the VLC one by around 20 seconds, 20-ish seconds, right? Keep that in mind. We'll talk more about that later. But remember that there's, inherent latency and it can be very significant depending on what you're doing, right? Now, let me just turn this off to save on network. So I go back to my OBS and stop streaming that, yeah? I'll just keep that running, but it won't be streaming anymore. Okay. So interestingly, actually, if you want to build a broadcast, like the broadcast part of an application, I think the easiest way to get that going is if you can find some way in your language, be that .NET, be that JavaScript, Python, Rust, whatever, if you can find a way to integrate FFmpeg into your apps, right? Because really, if you can get FFmpeg to work, because the most complicated part of broadcasting is actually getting that video stream, buffering that, encoding that into a media format, putting that into a container format, and then streaming that out to the server. That sounds very, very complicated. So if you want to get video, audio, video, multimedia up to an Rtmp stream, the easiest way would be if you can actually get FFmpeg to work. So if you're doing, if you have FFmpeg on your computers, for example, you can use it to stream multimedia, your own camera up to an Rtmp stream. The command can be very complicated, so I prepared a command like that, but this will stream whatever's on my webcam up to the same just stream earlier, right? Just like I was doing OBS. So if I do that, FFmpeg will just look at my webcam, stream whatever's on my webcam down to my IPS. So if that worked, I should be able to refresh this, and my stream should be live again, I think. There we go. See that? So I'm streaming my webcam, so not OBS anymore, so you don't see the stopwatch, right? So whatever's on my webcam is what you see on this one over here, right? So FFmpeg actually allows you to do broadcast very, very easily. If you're doing this on .NET, there's actually a very good library in NuGet called, I think, FFmpeg Core, or FFmpeg Sharp, that allows you to use FFmpeg directly from C#. So you can actually talk to FFmpeg using the OOP language that C#, a lot of C# users are already familiar with directly, right? Now, on the consumer side, if you want to watch a live stream, like I said, all you need to do is get that M3u8 URL, right? That's very, very, let's see if we can get this going. So I've actually prepared, yes, sir. What, I'm sorry, what do you? Oh, I was using OBS to stream. Oh, no, we're using IPS on both. We're just using a different broadcast. So the first one, I showed you OBS Studio to broadcast off, right? The second one, I used FFmpeg from a terminal. It's a bit, it's a little, FFmpeg is going to be less stable than OBS, largely because I haven't tuned FFmpeg on this terminal, just to keep it as simple as possible. Yeah. Good question, thank you. So, what I'm going to do now, whoops, let me see if I can get this right. So, the broadcast part of live stream is actually a bit complicated, if you ask me. So, if you're going to be building your own apps to broadcast, then that's why my suggestion is look for a way to integrate FFmpeg. If you don't want to build your own encoder, container, and so on and so forth, right? But the watching part of live streaming is actually very, very stable. So it's actually very, very easy. Like I said, you just need to get the URL. Most platforms already have out-of-the-box support for playing whatever is being broadcast on a live stream for a lot of different reasons. So what I've done now is, over here, I've actually prepared a Xamarin app. And I haven't touched Xamarin in a long time. So let's see if this works, yeah? So what I've done here in Xamarin is, you can see on my XML, I just created a media element over there, XCT media element, and then the source attribute of that, I pointed to, that's supposed to be the big buck bunny, I'm thinking. So if this boots up correctly, the only thing that I had to do earlier with the Xamarin app is I had to install the Xamarin Community Toolkit. I think a lot of Xamarin users already know about the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So you just need to install that, and then off you go. There we go. Right there. So I didn't even have to do anything special. So all I had to do was just get the URL and plug that into a video player. Chances are the video player will already know what to do with it. Right? So the watching part is very, very easy. Surprisingly, actually, the hardest part of watching is for web devs, if you ask me. So let's take a look. I prepared a web application as well. I really should prepare this before. Let me just boot this up.
You really are challenging the demo guys.
The demos, yes. So many demos, yeah. All right, so I have a web app. It's very, very standard React. So I am going to go to my, there we go, localhost. There we go. So now, I prepared a web app. It's just on my localhost, sorry. But it's very, very easy to play a live stream. So this is your big buck bunny again, right? So all I had to do essentially was just plug that into a video player. Now, the thing you have to remember with web apps, if you're building web apps, is that most browsers are not aware of the M3u8. So they know about, they can't see the M3u8, they can't get whatever is on the other side of it. But the thing is, they don't know what to do with it, right? So you have to put in the right stream protocol for it. For IPS, what we're using is something called HLS. So we'll talk more about that in a bit. But you can see here, yeah, same thing. So you can plug in any URL over here. We'll use that in a bit, yeah? Does anybody have any questions so far? So that's pretty much really how live stream works. No. So this video, we have a virtual machine somewhere that's just continuously streaming this up, so we can keep tabs of it.
Okay, so this was, you just picked that virtual URL to show on this.
Yes, correct. So for example, I can grab this prepared 720p, Then I'll plug this in here, up, and then it will just play that back, right?
Can you do the same on the Xamarin?
Yes. So see here on the source, let me just stop this. So let's try plugging that in, yeah? Ooh, I actually had to put down my mic.
Yeah, so for the people in the stream, please feel free to ask your questions as well in the chat. We'll get to them.
All right. So that worked, you should see, right? So it's, like I said, if you're going to be watching the stream, it's pretty much as easy as just plugging in a URL, right? The broadcast part is where it's difficult.
Is it possible? Do you have enough power to stream yourself and then show it in the Xamarin?
Oh, let's try that. Sure. Yes.
Who is paying for the bandwidth that you're using on IBM?
So good question.
Yeah. So the question was.
So the question was, who's paying for the bandwidth on IPS, right? So if you use Amazon IPS, the whole thing is pretty much serverless, right? So part of the cost you get for IPS is how much networking bandwidth you're actually using in total, from everyone who's watching to everyone who's broadcasting. But that's pretty much a lot like utility billing, just like how you pretty much price your electricity. So the more people watch, essentially the higher the costs are. I can show you the prices in a bit. If you like.
So it's like the same, like, more instances will come up when I'm watching.
Yeah, exactly.
So what would be the bare minimum cost if you live stream with nobody watching? Is there like a $1 cost or it's free?
So there's a separate cost for broadcasting and there's a separate cost for watching. So if you broadcast but nobody watches, then you're not costed for watching, right? That's absolutely zero. That's part of the nice things about it as well, right? Okay, so what I'm doing now is streaming my webcam over on essentially the same demo, but I just need to log back in. Give me a moment, yeah. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm streaming my webcam back up to IPS, just like I did earlier, but I'm going to be playing the video on Xamarin, on the Xamarin mobile app. So I'm live here. There you go. I'm going to be getting the playback configuration URL, the playback URL right there. Then I'm going to go back to my Xamarin. Ooh, I haven't touched Visual Code in a while, seriously. Visual Studio Code. Here we go. And plug that in. Ooh. Delete this other one. Then go back and do debugging, yeah? Okie dokie. Yeah, you're right. We're really testing the demo box today. Yes. There. Yeah. So that's essentially how it works. As long as you can figure out the broadcast part of it, pipe it into IVS, and then the watching part is very, very simple. So there we go. Yeah. Yeah, it has a very big lag, right? So I wanted to show you this part actually. So I was showing you this part, right? So I created a web app. The nice thing about IPS, and I'm gonna be jumping the gun here, is it actually, whoops, let me just refresh this. So there we go. We have comparison view, right? So I'm going to plug in my webcam view. Oh, no, not the webcam view. Let's get one of these, because these are higher fidelity, so you can kind of see it better. There we go. So this is the big buck bundle. What I've got on this page, if you can see here, is that I've got a standard live stream watch on the left side of the screen. Then here is pretty much an IDS scheme that's using something called chunk CMAF. So the nice thing about chunking here is that you get significantly less lag, right? Let's try that with the OBS Studio with a stopwatch. I'll talk more about how that works in a bit, but let's go back to the OBS Studio with a stopwatch. I'll start streaming that. Well, this will have a lag actually. I'll show you. There we go. So I'm back live here with my stopwatch. I'll go back to my website with Big Buck Money, but I'll place my, whoops, that's the wrong URL. Hold on. Playback URL, there we go. There we go. So I will put my OBS right on top. So you can kind of see it, yeah? So I have the original up there with the OBS. It's streaming out. This one over here, this is, but the left one is the standard stream. So standard live stream over here on the left. On the right, we're using something called a technique called chunk CMAF. So as you can see, this is actually going up from the Philippines, broadcasting up to Japan in Tokyo, then going back to the Philippines. As you can see, the lag is pretty much 4 seconds, 3 seconds, right? On a standard live stream, you pretty much get around 15 to 20 seconds of latency if you're going Philippines, Tokyo, Philippines, right? A lot of different reasons for that. So let's talk a bit more about that. I'll go back to this a bit, right? There we go. So the thing is, with any form of live streaming, I think the biggest challenge or the biggest component, the biggest challenge is latency, right? There is always going to be latency. The thing is, if you're going to be doing live streaming, you're really looking at 5 different processes that make live streaming work, no matter what you're trying to do. Peer-to-peer, broadcast encoding, etc., right? Most of the time, a lot of the lag is going to be coming from your broadcast, right there, and your distribution. Because if we're going to be broadcasting from the Philippines up to Tokyo, how much, the farther we are physically, the more latency we get, naturally, right? But the thing is, I think if you actually look into the latency in encoding, in live streaming, the most latency actually comes from the encoding, right? Because once your video, once your multimedia gets to your encoding server, because of the things it needs to do, it actually has to wait quite a bit of time before it can actually emit or send that media out to whoever's watching, right? The thing is, if you anybody here familiar with how video is encoded? Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much, right? So no, pretty much. As a rule of thumb, no matter what you're using, I don't know, MP4, MOF, DVI, whatever. The thing you have to contend with is something called keyframes. If you've ever watched one of those pirated DVDs, right, and then the pixels kind of seem to move without the background moving, and it just kind of muddles up the picture. Have you ever seen that? That's because there's something wrong with keyframes. So the thing is, one of the major ways video saves space is that you don't have to keep remembering every single frame, right? It's not like you have 24 JPEGs every second or something like that, right? What happens is that you have a keyframe, that's your JPEG, and then every frame after that is essentially a delta. What's changed since the last frame? Like what colors have changed, what pixels have moved, right? So you kind of have that thing going until the next keyframe, which is another full image, and then you get the delta, right? So that's what happens with most any kind of video encoding. Now the problem is if you're streaming something like this, because of the keyframes, because of how video uses keyframes like that. Let's say a video has a keyframe length of say 5 seconds. So there's 5 seconds between any keyframe. If you're watching a video at 60 FPS, that means that every 300 frames, there's only one keyframe, right? Pretty much. The thing is, if you're encoding that, you cannot send a packet, a segment of video without the corresponding keyframe, right? Because the other frames wouldn't know what to work with. That's just how videos work. So if you're encoded something like this, right? If your video gets to your encoder, it actually has to fill in, for example, 5 seconds of video before it can actually send that out. Right? So imagine if you were watching a video, that's already a built-in 5-second lag. If you want to be safe about it, you'd probably put a bit of a buffer, like maybe another 5 seconds in before or after, just to make sure the network's stable. So that's another inherent lag in the whole thing. Now, when I showed you the chunking CMAF earlier, the reason that works is because CMAF is actually a pretty, I wouldn't say pretty new. It's been around a while. Well, it just doesn't have a lot of support. But CMAF works by dividing that segment into chunks that are aware of each other. Let's call it that way, right? So the way chunking in CMAF works is that entire segment, it doesn't have to wait for the next keyframe before being sent out. So that makes it much, much easier for the encoder to send video, send information to whoever's watching much earlier. So you get a lot less lag, right? From the standard live streaming of around 15 to 20 Philippines to Tokyo, you can bring it down to around 3. And you get that out of the box from IBS. You just need to have a player that's aware of chunking CMAF, right? So that's pretty much that part of the latency going. Does anybody have any questions with that?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Right. So, of course, when you're encoding, you have a lot of consumers with different devices, right?
Correct.
So you have one on web, on high resolution, etc. Does that factor into the cost of the encoder and the distributor?
For IBS, not really, because part of what IBS does is it already encodes a lot of that for you. So it already has a lot of assumptions about what you're trying to do. So I was actually going to ask, why do you need that encoder in the middle, right? So if you're, for example, if I'm on my mobile phone and I'm live streaming something, and then another user is on another app, on another mobile app, why do I even need a third, like a middleman right there. Why can't I just connect directly to that person, right? Stream that media to the other person. There's really three major reasons I can think of. The most important one, I think, is the third one. That's really what you're alluding to, right? If you're live streaming, you can't really make assumptions about what technologies are available on the other end of the stream, right? Especially if you're going to be building a very, very distributed app, an app with a lot of users. Like I said earlier, if you're building a web app, right, it doesn't know, a browser doesn't know about HLS or Dash or Rtmp or CMAF or WebRTC or whatever. You cannot assume that the other end can play MP4 or can play AVI or can play MKV or whatever, right? So one of the things that an encoder actually does is it encodes your video, your multimedia in a lot of different formats. And then what happens is that whoever is watching on the other end gets to choose, right? So what the watcher gets is like a list of the available formats, in the available qualities, in the available fidelities, and then it gets to choose. What can I use across all of these options, right? Let me show you what that looks like. I was telling you earlier that, whoops, let me just go back to my purpose. I'm still streaming apparently, yay. I'm still bowling, right? So I was telling you, essentially just need a URL to pretty much watch anything, right? Let's take a look at what that looks like. What is on the other end of that URL? So let's take a look. Let me just get that. Contrary to what a lot of people may think, the M3u8 file isn't the video, isn't the audio video actually. So let me show you what it looks like. I just downloaded that US West thing. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm using the Big Buck Bunny. So I can show you the Toolkit if you want. All right. Cool. So this is the Big Buck Bunny. So if you take a look at the M3u8, the M3u8 file is actually just a text file. So it looks like this. We call this a manifest. So in particular, technically, this is actually HLS, HTTP live streaming. It's in HLS format. So what happens is that inside this manifest, once the player gets to read this, it gives a few options right there. Can you see that? Yep.
So there are different formats already available there.
Correct.
With different URLs.
Correct, exactly. So that's part of what the encoder does. It encodes the video into a lot of different fidelities and formats. So if you notice, actually, if you were very observant, when I started playing some of those live streams, it started out with very, very low resolution first, because the player will be able to play that very quickly, and then it just ballooned into the bigger qualities when it can, right? If you try to watch something on YouTube, for example, you generally always start with the pixelated versions, right? And then it starts getting better, right? So that's the reason for it. You actually see a lot of the streaming manifests like this with a lot of different options, and the player gets to choose like what they want, what best they can play, right? So that's part of what an encoder does.
I always thought my eyes were. When I look at YouTube, it's not clear that on the side. So I thought it was my eyes.
Yeah, just like if you were going to a dark place, right? You're just getting adjusted, right? No, there's a technical reason for that, because the player is able to play the low pixel versions first. That's much faster to get to. So that is really one of the more important things that an encoder does. I'm going to have to wrap this up, right? So I'm just going to show you these. And then I'll go into the question, I'll try to wrap up. So one of the more important things to note about is that if you're doing live streaming, you're going to have to contend with some of these things, right? I kept talking about Rtmp, HLS, Dash, CMAF, all night, right? The reason for that is because when you're trying to live stream, when you're trying to broadcast, when you're trying to watch live multimedia, that multimedia has to get to, you know, where it's going somehow, right? So a streaming protocol is pretty much how does the media get to one destination from point A to point B, from the OBS studio to the IPS, from the distribution to whoever's watching, to the Xamarin app, right? How does it get there? That's the streaming protocol. Now, if you're using IPS, the broadcast and the watch, the client, consumer, doesn't have to be the same protocol. That's actually one of the challenges about it. If you're using IPS, the broadcast is Rtmp, which is pretty much generally one of the more popular streaming protocols right now. So if you're going to be using something like OBS, automatically it will have Rtmp support, right? The consumer end of it, if you're using IPS, is HLS now. And HLS is a streaming protocol, HTTP live streaming. It was invented by Apple a few years back, right? So if you're using something like iOS, HLS automatically comes supported. For other stuff like Android and web apps, you have to plug in something to make it work. But just keep in mind that if you're going to be working with live streaming, there's a bunch of things you have to kind of consider. Like, what are the pros and cons of Rtmp? Why Rtmp over HLS, over WebRTC, over CMAF, over? Yeah, right? So there's pros and cons across every one of those. So just in case you need to know, IPS is broadcast Rtmp and consumer HLS, right? If you're building, for example, if you're building like another Zoom, right? Another like call where you can do a conference call where everybody can talk and everybody can, you know, pretty much provide content to a discussion, like a video conference, right? A better option would be WebRTC, for example, because, you know, you gotta have to contend with pros and cons like that, right? Because we're out of time, I will wrap that up there. So where can you find out more? If you just want to start, you know, exploring. There's a dedicated website for IPS on ips.rocks. So there's a bunch of things you can do there on IPS rocks. I think I have the page open here somewhere. Yeah, like here. You can go to the page. There's a bunch of instructions. There's an estimator for how much latency you can expect. Like if you were viewing from, say, let's go Philippines, right here. It says that the estimate would be a latency of 5 to 10 seconds and a good quality of service, right? So you can kind of have estimates like that as well. There's a bunch of other things that might be able to help you with. There's a bunch of cool demos you might want to get inspiration from, and some GitHub repositories as well, if you want to try to hack those out. And then, of course, there's a cost estimator over here, right? So if you want to see how much something would cost if you're building something on IPS, check that out.
Can we stay on that first?
Sure.
The cost estimator. So I'm just curious. The live stream that you did earlier.
Wow. Okay.
What would be the costing for something like NAR broadcast, and then you have 100 viewers, maybe? You know, just
let's try
made up numbers, right?
Made up numbers. 950. Is it? Oh, closest delivery region. Let's go with Tokyo, right? Easiest. So that would be a $15 broadcast if you had 100 viewers.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
For an hour of live stream.
Correct.
Okay.
10,000. Ooh, that's gonna balloon up 1,000 trade. So one of the things you can do with the IBS actually is bring it down to basic. If you actually don't need a lot of the bells and whistles I showed you earlier, like if, for example, if you don't need 3 seconds of latency, for example, you're doing a Twitch stream, it doesn't really matter if you're, lagging behind by 20 seconds if you're watching someone play a game, right? Then you can always go back down to basic. I'm sorry. Social selling. Really depends on how much latency you can tolerate, right? For social selling, I'm thinking that if everybody is on 20 seconds, right, it doesn't really matter if you have 20 seconds of latency, right? Correct, right. So if you can kind of guarantee that everybody's kind of, 15, 20 seconds, then that's not really too much of a problem. I actually don't think so, but you can plug in VRM into the IBS stream. And then the way the VRM works is that we can then only allow, say, logged in users to watch that, or you might have some other custom authorization. Yeah, so you can do that.
Actually, that was my next question. That in terms of security or at least limiting, where does the VRM come in or in AWS?
Yeah, so you can actually plug in something called a playback key into IBS. So when you create a channel, you can set the channel up to have a playback key. And then only people who have the right playback key and knows how to properly use the playback key can play the video or the stream. So the next, yes.
Sorry, just to interrupt on that. So, and of course the key rotates, right?
Yes.
So does that mean even if I have, let's say, the M3u8, I would still need another key?
Yes.
To be able to play. So it
Correct.
doesn't guarantee if I have the M3u8, I would be able to play it.
Yes, correct, exactly.
Okay.
So it works a lot like, I was thinking of something and then it slipped. I was going to sing a symmetric key, yeah.
Can you do
1 billion?
One view.
One, sorry?
1,000.
Oh, 1,000.
Just one.
Oh, just one, okay. There you go. 23 cents.
What about standard?
Standard, yeah. $2 for an hour, yeah.
Okay.
This is not regionally specific, right?
This is, yeah. I'm streaming from Japan. So it's much cheaper if you can actually, I can actually stream it from North America. You get a lot more, remember that 10,000? It's cheaper at scale, but it's not really as cheap. You don't really feel the cost difference if it's just going to be $1.
And what I was thinking was, you do this, you have an option of recording next week.
The encoding? Recording, yes. I actually was going to show you that, but I ran out of time.
Okay. What I was thinking was, if you want to do it to 10,000 people, and there might be a problem with the cost. You record yourself like doing a live stream.
Yes.
And then then you load it up and
correct. So you can actually do what that's technically called a VOD, right? A video on demand. So IPS also allows you to automatically record your live streams, and then it saves it into Amazon S3, where you can then play it back via VOD, right? So correct, yeah. So then the cost will be S3 retrieval and network costs associated with that.
Just to correct that, when you're recording at a particular time, you have to wait until the entire broadcast is finished before object in S3 is created? Is
Oh.
that how it works?
Actually, that's a very good question. From my understanding of the technology, I don't think so, but I'm not quite sure.
So in other words, you could potentially be switching between POD and live stream. For example, if you want to do, you want to skip back, you want to go back to 5 minutes ago because you missed something, then afterwards move back to the live stream.
No. So what happens is that your videos, your broadcasts are saved to S3, right? Those you cannot access from the playback URL. The playback URL will always go to the live stream. Will always go to the channel, right? If you want to set up that VOD like this, you have an S3 bucket, and then pretty much just like your standard run-of-the-mill S3 bucket cloud.cdn kind of setup, right? So you'll have a different URL for your VODs, completely separate. So you can work it out that way. Cool. Any other questions?
Can you explain in using different protocols like what you use like RTC and then
RTC? No, for IDS it's always broadcast Rtmp, HLS function. Yeah. If you want to be a little bit more lower level than IDS, then the corresponding AWS services are called elemental. So there's an elemental family of services dedicated for that. So IDS is kind of like the simple version of that. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? On the chat, do we have questions?
We don't have questions in the chat.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in any case, if you do have any questions, you can always email me. The code base for the web app I showed you is right there on my GitHub. You can play with it if you'd like. I will work on uploading the Xamarin code base there as well. I'll just put it in the same repository to make it easier, but it's not there yet, sorry. But I will put it on that code base. So if you want to play around with that, it's right there. Okay, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much, and I think it's time for us to turn the lights back on for everybody. All right, I hope that did not suddenly shock the people out there. So, all right, let's conclude the stream before we continue with the event here. So, thank you very much for joining us in this live stream. I hope you you enjoyed it and that you learned something. And again, for follow us on our meetup page at meetup.com/PHINUG to find out about our next events. We would like to again thank the AWS Club Pilipinas, AWS user groups, Education.ph for sponsoring this event and for providing us with this lovely venue tonight. So from us here at the KMC Armstrong Corporate Center, thank you very much for watching. Have a good night. Woo. All right.
All right. Thanks, John.